right, everybody. It is just a few minutes past the top of the hour. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this evening's episode of the Phi Alpha Delta speaker series. Tonight, I have the pleasure of serving as your host / moderator. For those who do not know me, my name is Nicole Gritta, and I'm the International Vice Justice. Tonight, I'm joined by Sister Cameron Buckner, and she's going to be talking with us about the rise of social media influencers and the need for lawyers. Better known as Cameron Monet, Sister Buckner is a licensed attorney, content curator, and influencer marketing consultant. With over 7 years of influencer marketing experience, she has gained an extensive understanding of establishing a credible brand and creating thriving businesses through social media. Let me try that again. She has gained an extensive understanding of establishing a credible brand and creating thriving businesses through social media. Tonight, we are going to do our webinar a little bit differently than we normally do. I'd like you to all imagine that we're gathered together in person, and Sister Buckner and I are having a little fireside chat. And I even put up a special Zoom background for everybody. So I hope you can picture that, and that helps you picture it. In terms of our agenda, we're going to devote about 30 to 40 minutes to this chat. We'll then have some time to take questions from the audience. When asking your questions, we ask that you please utilize the Q&A feature within the Zoom platform. And if you do have questions as we go through our discussion, please feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we'll be sure to answer those as we have time. All right, so let's get right into it. Cameron, tell us a little bit about how you first became a social media influencer.
Hey, y'all. I am so excited to be here and get into how I became a lawyer influencer, as I like to call it. So let's take us back to 2014. That's when I started my YouTube channel. Back then, making money online was not really talked about. If it was happening, I didn't know about it. I was not making any money. I was just having fun, creating content, and just interacting with an audience online and building a community. I was talking about hair, makeup, fashion, just like everyone else kind of was in the industry that I was kind of navigating in and the niche that I was trying to grow in. And then I went to law school in 2016. And honestly, I was like, I'm not doing my hair. I'm not doing my makeup. So we're going to have to switch up the content because I need to study. So that's when I realized there was a large group of people that were following me that also was interested in law school and also wanted to know what it was like, the real behind the scenes, like what was actually happening in law school? How do I actually apply? Because honestly, y'all, I had no idea. I had no idea about the LSAT. I had no idea about any of the process to get into law school. So then I shifted my platform into teaching others how they can navigate that space in the law space and still integrating the fashion and the beauty and the lifestyle content in that as well.
So let's take us, I guess, back to 2014. I think you were an undergrad then. What were you studying at the time?
So I had just made a decision to do political science because that was around the same time that I decided to go to law school. And I thought you had to be a political science major to go to law school, which we all know is not true. And then I minored in criminology because I was going to be a criminal lawyer at that time.
So you talked a little bit about your journey and how you changed your approach in the social media space. What was that driving or that push that pushed you over the edge and made you decide to, in fact, go to law school?
Honestly, it was my advisor. I had an amazing advisor who I just talked to him about my skills and my interests. And I had been in performing arts all my life. I loved being on stage. I loved theater, but I also loved to read and write and research. So it was definitely an interesting balance between those two kind of things that feel so different. And then when I told him about my skills, he was like, try pre-law, try some mock trial, like just go to some of their practices. And I did that. And then I joined the mock trial team and I just fell in love with it. I had so much fun with it. It gave me that same thrill and excitement and passion that I got when I was on stage, when I was in the courtroom. So I was like, yep, law school is definitely it.
So tell us a little bit about more about your mock trial. Was that something that you also highlighted on your YouTube channel?
So I didn't, because I wanted to keep everything so separate, which is ironic because now it's basically the same thing, one and the same. I was like, law school me is different. It's going to be different than me online. Like my online space is just going to be hair and makeup and fashion, and that's it. And again, like I wasn't making any money from it. I didn't make my first like YouTube check or even like brand partnership money until I would say end of 2015, beginning of 2016. And even still then, I was like, school is so different. Like that's where I focus. That's so different than online. But now, as we all know, it's so much overlap with like in real life versus online presence for a lot of people.
So how did that come about? How did you go from this was something that you enjoyed developing the content to actually getting paid for it?
Yeah, so honestly, I just did some research because I saw some other creators talking about it. I used to watch a ton of YouTube videos. That's also why I chose that platform first to get on, because I was already watching so many videos. So I was like, you know what, let me just create some and just see what happens. So then I heard a few other creators talk about, hey, I'm actually getting paid from this. Just turn on your monetization in your settings and like you're fine. Back then, you didn't have to have like a requirement of following or views or anything. You could just turn it on. And I was like, when did this get there? It was like an update they did. I want to say in 2014, 2015, when they finally actually made that an option. So I turned it on and I was like, oh, great. Like, you know, a couple $100 here, $100 there. It was nice. I was a college student, had like $12. So I was like, an extra $100 is definitely is amazing for me. It was super beneficial. But then when I started getting brand partnerships, that was when I just started to come up with a number. They would say, well, how much do you charge? And it was like $50, $100. I don't know. I have no idea. Until now, it just became a lot more people talking about it in the creative space. The people that were making the thousands of dollars just started talking about it. And I started doing some more research on it. Maybe that was the lawyer in me that wanted to learn everything that I could about the industry to see if it even could be anything more than it was.
So what would you say to somebody who, like you, maybe has gotten into creating content on social media? How would you recommend they try to find a way to monetize that?
Absolutely. I would say first, know why you're creating your content. Because I think a lot of people now, because they know you can make money in any amount of money online, that the first thought is, okay, I want to do this because I want to make some money. But for me, it's been a long game. So like I said, I started in 2014. I didn't see any amount of money until the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. And it was still only maybe $100 here, $200 there, not something you can actually live off of. So know your why first, and then just ask other creators, be inquisitive, do some research. YouTube is an amazing source, not only to create, but also to find information. And now, like I said, so many people are talking about it. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask other creators, especially if they're like a same or similar following or niche. Most of us are more than happy to give some guidance to say, hey, just give them a number and see how they respond. And the more that you're comfortable with negotiating and figuring out your worth, like start off with how many hours does it take you to record? Okay, if it takes me 5 hours to record, edit, and upload the video, let's say I want to charge a brand $100 an hour. Come up with your own kind of rate and metric system and start trying it out.
So once you click that button, did the brands just start coming to you, or did you have to reach out to them? How did that process work?
So interesting enough, they started coming to me, but it wasn't really the brands I wanted at first. So just to get like the experience, to get my foot in the door and understand the process of what this new industry, the word influencer came like way later on, but I would say like 2018-ish. But I was like, okay, let me just say yes to a couple of brands that I may be interested in. Maybe it's not like my ideal dream brands, but just to kind of get my foot in the door to see what the process looks like, to see how it feels to negotiate, to see how it feels to create content specifically for a brand to use for marketing and advertising, because that's really what influencers are. We're digital marketing and advertisers. So that's how I did it. But now there also are influencer marketing platforms, which I think is a great place to start once you already have built the traction of creating the content. So essentially what they act as a third party between you and the brands. So the brands go on there and they tell the website, here are the campaigns we're currently working with. This is the type of creator we're looking for. This is the following if there's a requirement. And then the creator can then submit their profile to that brand, and the brand can then reach out to them if they think they're a good fit. So that's kind of like a soft cold pitch. I like to say like a soft pitch to a brand versus finding their email and just saying, hey, I love your content, let's work together.
Is there a top website that you'd recommend for someone who is interested in seeing whether there are any opportunities for the types of things that they're already creating in the content space?
I would say that there's so many, but the ones that I use probably more frequently would be Aspire IQ, Captivate, obviously, Collectively. Those are like the top ones that I'm thinking of off the top of my head that I use probably more frequently.
Was there ever a point in time since you click that on button that you've been off, right? Or have you stayed in this space and just kind of changed things up a bit as you've evolved throughout your journey?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I had no strategy, and sometimes I still go into I'm just gonna create and have fun with it, but I had no strategy. I had no desire really to like reach a certain amount of money or a certain amount of following. I was just creating the content. And then, of course, once you start to make some money, you're like, okay, let's see if I can make a little bit more or if I can charge a little bit more. But I don't know necessarily if there was like a well, I guess I can say when I shifted into more of the like the law school content, became more consistent. So before it was just I'm posting, I'm not making any money, I'm just kind of throwing it up on there. But then once I did make money, it's like, okay, if I'm more consistent, can I make more? So I think I just kind of leaned more into being consistent and building a strategy over it.
All right, so we fall in love with this space. We get our first brand reaching out to us. Kind of walk us through what your journey looked like after that.
So one brand kind of leads into another. So I like to say it's kind of like your online resume to other brands. So once you start working with certain levels of brands, and they're like, okay, well, if that brand is comfortable with her promoting their product, we're going to work with her. If that brand has worked with her, well, we want to work with her because we're a competitor. Like, which is so interesting. I always tell people, if you want to get a brand's attention, promote their products and their competitors' products, as long as you're not under any type of exclusivity clause. But because that way both brands can see what you can do for their brands and for their products. Because the goal is for you to get in with a brand and like stay with them for as long as you can. For example, like last year I worked with Dove for 8 months. It was great because then my audience also got familiar with that brand, just like me and that brand became to build a relationship.
In terms of, making that decision you talked about a little bit ago to go to law school after having that conversation with your advisor, how did things shift in terms of what you were doing? I know you mentioned earlier you weren't as into fashion and makeup and beauty since you were focused on school. So, what would a typical day of content look like for you when you were in law school?
So I'd have really two different types of content. And I kind of do that now where the first type would be just the real raw behind the scenes vlogging, where I'd bring my camera around with me to class and to extracurricular activities. I was on the trial team and I would share like how I was feeling and my emotions and the excitement about law school and what I was studying and how I would schedule my day and things like that, more of just like the organic vlog type footage. Then I would plan certain specific topics. So I would do like a Q&A about maybe student loans or about how I'm going to get through an exam or tips and tricks on being productive. So those are more like the sit down specific to a type of content. And I would usually get those videos from comments. So I'd ask my audience, hey, do y'all have any questions about something in law school? And they'd be like, well, what do you wear to class? So then I'd do like a fashion haul about what I wear to class. So I tried to make sure that I was catering my content, also where that strategy started to come in, catering my content to what my audience actually wanted to watch.
Did you continue to do the content all through law school? And if so, did that content evolve in any way from your first year to your last year at law school?
Yeah, so I'd say I was like, I can do this. I can maintain consistently throughout all 3 years. And it ebbed and flowed for sure. I'd say I'm the most consistent now, of course, because I'm doing it full time. But I tried to plan ahead. So the sit down videos I could pre-record. So I'd pick one day out the week and record like 2 to 3 videos and be good for 2 to 3 weeks because I'd post at least once a week. That was my goal. But of course, during exam season, there were some times I was like, I just cannot. Or even more specifically, the bar exam, no content. I'm sorry. I love y'all, but you're going to have to catch me on the other side. So I definitely started to find like where my boundaries were and how I could find a healthy way to be consistent, but still I have to prioritize law school because that was my main priority.
So law school's over, you sit for the bar exam. Where does this journey take you next?
Well, after the bar exam, let me tell you, I actually got a job offer 6 months before I graduated. So the Christmas actually before I graduated, I got a job offer to work in an employment litigation plaintiff's firm. I was so excited. I loved them. I clerked for them for a year and a half while I was in law school. So it was great. They got the offer. So after I took the bar exam, it was like that waiting period is if you're going to pass or not. Thank God I did pass. But I started working for them like September. So the bar exam was over July. I started working with them September. And then I just kind of changed my content to be more of, okay, well, the day in the life of a lawyer, what does it look like to do different tasks now versus being a law clerk versus now I'm leaning into hopefully passing the bar exam. I recorded my bar exam passage video, and just kind of bringing my audience along the journey. I feel like even this is kind of like a pro tip for small businesses and businesses in general, even like lawyers owning firms, is people love the journey, right? People buy from people, especially now in the social media influencer marketing era. Everyone wants to see who was the person behind the brand. So for me, my strategy, which I started to curate and then now I kind of intentionally do it, but is to share the journey when I'm going to do something different. So me sharing the journey of how do I get into law school, and then sharing the law school experience, and then sharing the journey to get to the bar, and then sharing the bar, and then sharing the journey to become a lawyer, and then sharing me actually as a lawyer. Like the process is what I started to do. So that's exactly what I did working at a firm. Of course, I had to decrease it a little bit with what I can share. Then I could be a little bit more open and honest while I was a law student. But as a lawyer, because I'm working for a firm, I do represent them. Like I'm a representation of that firm. Therefore, I had to be a lot more like I couldn't really share as much. But I made sure like I could do voiceovers if I'm just showing me typing to explain, hey, I'm working on this type of document. I'm working on this type of specific task that my boss gave me. This is how you can ask questions if you're a new lawyer and you're struggling with how to even ask your boss a question because it can be kind of intimidating. This is how you're able to do that. So tips and tricks like that.
So working with the plaintiff's employment firm, did you encounter any pushback or resistance for you continuing to be a part of this space?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I think towards the end it was more of a yes on their part, but it wasn't because my work ethic had changed. It was just more of they started to realize, oh wait, you actually have a decently large following online. Mind you, I did let them know before they even gave me the job offer. I let them know as a law clerk, hey, I'm a social media creator. Here are my social media accounts. Hey, when I accept the job offer, just to let you know, like this is something I've been doing forever. But I think part of it was different firms and just different people in general still don't understand the social media space, right? Some people can listen to, hey, like the influencer marketing is $1 billion industry. Lawyers are needed. Take that, learn more, and integrate it into their firm, or support the person or support whoever's doing it, regardless if they want to be directly involved. But some people see it and they still don't understand it, or they're intimidated by it, whatever the case may be. And I realized we just had a difference of opinion in what the influencer marketing industry was and was going to be.
So was that the point at which you realized, hey, this isn't for me and I need to start my own consulting firm?
Yes and no. Such a lawyer. It depends. Yes and no. So also I started to match my income. So I'm like, okay, I'm making the same amount of money. And this was just doing partnerships. I wasn't charging anyone for contract consultation or anything outside of work. So they couldn't say I did that. I never did that. I would just do it, kind of get experience, but I never charged anybody. It was strictly on brand partnerships. I'm like, okay, I'm matching the income. Then I was making more. So I was like, okay, it's either I can put more time into this and essentially double or triple how much I'm making at my current job, and or I can decrease that to make the firm more comfortable with me working more hours for them, or they're thinking, how does she have time to do this and she's getting her work done, whatever the question may be. I had to make that decision, and I figured going into the firm, once I got towards like the end of law school, I think I started to think maybe I could do like this influencer marketing thing instead. But of course, fearful, and also I think it's smart to, kind of speaking to law students, it's smart to get a job, learn from them as much as you can. I learned so much out of law school because practicing is completely different than law school. So I'm so grateful for that opportunity. So I was able to take the tips and tricks I learned from that and then incorporate it into my consulting firm. But I did kind of have a little inclination that I may come in a fork in the road where it's like, are you going to quit or are you going to stay and decrease the amount that you're doing on your social media?
What do you think was the most important thing that you learned either in law school or in your time with the firm that has helped you succeed in this space?
Definitely negotiating, and then also just being confident in the way you present. And I say shout out to trial team for that. And also, I remember like my trial team coach, he's a judge as well. And he would tell us like the most prepared is going to win. Like if you're the most prepared, you're going to win. So for me, it was like, okay, I've been researching social media ever since 2014 when I was like, wait, let me see what this is about and people are making money. So keeping that same momentum in any industry that I'm in and any job that I'm currently doing has really helped me. So I feel like excel in what I'm doing now.
I want to shift a little bit. You know, we've been talking about you as a social media creator. I want to talk about you as a advisor and counselor, because I know that's a big part of your business too. So
Mhm.
in terms of advocating for yourself, it sounds like the negotiation skills were really critical to developing that. What skills have been most helpful to you in the advising space when you're talking with whether it's a new client or an existing client? How does that relationship work?
Absolutely. I think the number one, I'd say, compliment that I get, and I'm so proud about that, is that I'm able to communicate terms within a contract, or even just how the influencer marketing industry works as a whole, in a way that anyone can understand. So I think a lot of times, especially coming out of law school, it's the big words. We want to sound like this and do that. And I realize, like, that's not always the key. Yes, if I'm talking to a judge, I might need to put on my Latin terms, but aside from that, when I'm talking to other creators, they're already like, we don't even understand. We don't want to do this. I want them to feel comfortable when they're speaking to me and know that I'm going to help them. I'm going to walk them through, and they're comfortable to ask me any questions, comments, and concerns during the process. So that, to me, would be the most valuable thing, is that I'm able to communicate in a way where people feel comfortable talking to me and asking me questions that feel uncomfortable, especially when it comes to like contracts. It can feel so intimidating and scary. And I try to make sure my clients know that it doesn't have to be.
So I would imagine that one of the challenges being a lawyer and advising clients in this space is having potential clients all over the place. I know you're in Birmingham, right. I'm in Memphis. We've got folks listening in from all over the country. How do you navigate that? Are you barred in, all states? How do you navigate that piece?
Absolutely. Great question. I get this one all the time. So first, I'm a consultant first. I say, actually, I'm a creator first and a consultant second, but I'm a consultant first when it comes to my lawyer hat. Then second, I'm a lawyer. So I always make sure that whenever someone sets up a call with me, a clarity call or a contract consultation, they understand that I am really leaning on the fact that I'm an influencer marketing expert. I'm leaning on the fact that you can be a manager, an agent, just like if we're talking about entertainment law. You don't have to be a lawyer to be in those roles and to advocate for your client and to make sure you negotiate on their behalf and making sure that they understand the terms within the contract. So I always make sure that they mark, yes, I agree. I tell them when we get on the phone, they have to sign something. It's all signed, sealed, delivered when it comes to that. But the benefit is, if they do need a lawyer in this space, they don't have to go and do some research. They can reach out to me and I'm able to connect them with a lawyer that I know. Thankfully, I'm well connected in the United States, Canada, and the UK. I have attorneys that I'm able to refer clients to if it's something that I'm not able to handle. So that's usually how I do, is make sure that I'm a consultant first. And then if they do need a lawyer in the circumstance, I'm able to, of course, pro hoc vice, as we know, into a court if I need to, and have them sign an engagement letter, and it's completely separate. So that's what I've been doing a lot lately. Also, per the model rules, I just did a CLE. So per the model rules, when you are working as a lawyer and you're doing something that's lawyer related, I think it's like 5.7, don't quote me, but I know it's model rule 5 point something. And when you own a law firm, then you have to be a little bit more cautious. But because I don't own a law firm, I have a consulting firm, and we outsource our legal services either to myself and or other attorneys. You have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to that, because there's really no discrepancy when it comes to if it's a law firm. Because I say it's not a law firm, it's on the website. It doesn't say LLP, it doesn't say Cameron Monet Law Firm or anything of that nature, the legal team law firm. So we try to make it as clear as possible on the website and when we're talking with clients.
How did you arrive at that distinction, right? Like, I don't think I would have had any idea if I wanted to get in this space that I should do a consulting firm versus having a law firm. I would just think, oh, if I got a client and they're in a jurisdiction that I'm not licensed in, I'll just refer them out. So how did you know that was the best way to approach what you wanted to do?
Asking around and a lot of research. I read the model rules and I tried to search as much as possible. And that was really the only rule that talks about something like this. Because as we all know, social media is so new. There's really not much reference to social media, influencer marketing at all, aside from like advertising, so solicitation, which is completely different. So it doesn't really say anything specific to this, or like virtual law firms, as we know, have really popped up since 2020. So there's not much leeway there. And you can still have a law firm and do this. It just has to be very, very clear on your website and to your client that this service is separate from my legal services. So for me, I was like, you know what, let me just opt to do a consultant firm starting out. I may later on have a law firm, because now, okay, I've got my feet wet and I understand the process a little bit more. Being a new lawyer, I wanted to err on the side of caution as well. So that's how I did it. Also, I asked the bar. So call the bar association. I asked them the question. This is what they referred me to. And they said, as long as you don't have a law firm, make it very clear. Make sure you're not telling them I'm your lawyer or anything of that nature. Don't step in as their lawyer, and you should be good to go. So don't be afraid to call them and ask questions around too, for sure. Tell their lawyers.
That's great advice. I sit on the hearing committee for the Tennessee Board of Professional Responsibility. And when I get questions, I always say, call the council at the office in Nashville. That's what they're there for. They can always give you the best advice. They're most familiar with the rules. So we've talked a little bit about, your journey and the decision to open the consulting firm. I want to kind of circle back to where we started and creating the content and building those partnerships. I know you've talked a little bit about the evolution of you and your brand, but what does a typical day look like for you now? I mean, I would imagine with all these different hats that you wear, it's got to be challenging to figure out how you're going to tackle the next day.
Absolutely. So every day is different, which is something that I really love. Also, what I try to do is have specific days for specific things. So Tuesdays and Thursdays are usually like my call days. So for example, like today I'm doing this. Earlier I did a podcast interview. Before that I had a call with my manager. So I try to have specific things for specific days, because for me, once I'm in a creative like rhythm, I like to stay in it for that whole day. And it can be difficult to switch. Okay, let me go into lawyer mode. But sometimes I have to do that. Sometimes I have to do that. That's just the name of the game. Also, I'm huge about to-do lists and planning, and my calendar I would not be able to survive without her. And making sure that every morning that I'm double checking, making my weekly to-do list, separating it into daily to-do list, and just staying on task, but being realistic and giving myself the flexibility that, hey, you know what, maybe I need an extra hour in here I need a 2-hour lunch today, which is also the benefit of working for yourself and the flexibility that I was really looking for before I started doing it full time.
So you mentioned a manager, and earlier you kept using the we pronoun. So do you have a team that you work with regularly, and can you tell us about them and how they came to be a part of your team?
Yeah, so right now I have 2 other people working for me, and I'm actually having legal interns / externs this summer. So I'm really excited about that, to kind of dip into that era with the consulting firm. So I have a virtual assistant, and she helps with the Legal Tea social Instagram page, posting on that page, interacting and engaging with that page, and making sure that we are staying consistent over there, repurposing content from my YouTube and my TikTok onto the Instagram page, and letting me know if there's any like questions that keep coming up that I can make a video about, just making me stay on top of what my community is asking for over there. And then my operations manager, she handles my emails, makes sure that my calendar is up to date, helps me with any back end things. So if we're recreating systems, like we're preparing for law students, so we want to make sure that the systems are seamless. So we're kind of like going back over that, preparing for some new things on the website, and a lot of more research this year. It's research heavy, so we want to make sure that we're prepared for any amount of growth that we expect to have on the legaltea.com and CameraMonet.com.
So when we're talking about, having staff and bringing them into your team and making them a part of the team, what advice do you have? Did you hire folks? Did you get referrals?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's always a challenge for a small business owner to figure out who to bring into the fold.
So honestly, hiring has been one of the hardest things. This is my first time hiring. I've hired several times, but I feel like I feel good about this group. So we'll see. I think my number one advice is to work on being a great leader and understand what you actually need them to do. I think a lot of times, even having like paralegals and legal assistants, we just like throw tasks on them without direction. But it's like what they start to do, we're like, why are they doing that? It's not really helpful, but it's like, have you given them clear guidance as to what this actually contributes to? Because sometimes it feels like if someone just is responding to an email, they don't get the full picture of how it's really, really helping the entire business. So I try to make it very clear and seamless and open and honest with both of my team members to let them know, this is why I'm asking you to do this. This is super helpful. Here's the step-by-step. Do you need me to send you a video tutorial, or what do you need from me to make sure that you can execute what I'm asking you and we both can progress in our relationship? Also, a benefit of being a creator and being online is my virtual assistant actually reached out to me. I mentioned in a YouTube video that I was thinking about hiring and probably a virtual assistant, and she has her own virtual assistant business, and she reached out, and it just happened to work out with timing. Same with my operations manager. She reached out to me. She had been following me for years. I've seen her interact with my content. Of course, I still did a full interview process, got applications and things like that, but I was leaning towards both of them because they had already reached out and they already know my brand. For me, that was important because I have an interesting position, an interesting job, that I need someone that already understands my brand, what I do and do not do on social media, what I can and cannot do, what I can accept. Also, what I liked about both of them is they both have worked in a law firm before. One was a legal assistant, one was a paralegal. So it was just like a nice extra touch for the relationship. Something else you can do is, aside from like asking your audience, is you can just go on different job boards. So some schools have amazing job boards when you're searching for people. So alumni at Cumberland is amazing. I went to Cumberland when I was like, hey, I want legal externs, and they set it all up. That was perfect. Also, there's this website called Upwork. Lots of freelancers. Maybe you have something very quick that you want someone to do. And Fiverr is also another good freelance website. So those two are great to kind of get your foot in the door, and they have amazing people. I've gotten several contractors from there as well.
So that actually is a good segue into my next question. I was going to ask, the folks that you have working with you now, are they independent contractors or are they employees? And why did you decide, whichever one they are, why did you decide to go that route?
Yeah, so they're both independent contractors, but fingers crossed, my operations manager towards the end of the year should be a full-time employee. I do that first, one, to protect myself and my business. I don't want to fully commit if I'm not quite sure how I feel with the person, because done that before and it wasn't a great, basically learning from mistakes. So I like to get people on like a trial run. Let's see how this works. Do you like the relationship? Do I like the relationship? Is this actually beneficial? That's something that I definitely try to look into. But I've already noticed from the short time that I've had her that I know I wouldn't want her on board, especially with the goal also first part of next year or end of this year is to hire another consultant. So I have a law student that I've been following, and she reached out and was like, I graduate this year. I would love to work for you. So preparing for that, it's just a different level of preparation when it comes to insurance and things of that nature. So starting out, if you're a new business owner, you're kind of like dipping your toe in. Contractors is a great way to kind of get a feel for the environment of hiring.
Excellent. So, the session tonight is called The Rise of Social Media Influencers and the Need for Lawyers. And we have a great question in the chat, the Q&A, which is, which social media platforms have you noticed have need for the most legal help?
Oh, great question. And I'm going to give a few caveats. So I would say TikTok, because it's the newest platform and it's the platform that a lot of creators are seeing the most growth, specifically younger creators. So and just as a disclaimer, I'm 28, I'm a millennial. So hey, I'm not that old. However, there are Gen Z creators that are making millions of dollars overnight. And it's intimidating. And they, one, don't even understand the industry, let alone understand contracts. So I think TikTok is a great space to be on. Even if you're on there just educating, like I do with my TikTok, it's a great space to grow and kind of get that clientele, but also to get clients because they need help over there. But on the other fence, I would say YouTube, because it is the longest and I'd say strongest social media platform when it comes to like long-term creators. So a lot of YouTubers are well in the six figures, doing this for years. YouTube is owned by Google, so it's like a search engine platform, which is amazing. It is the ideal platform for, I'd say, most creators. So that also is a great space, and they're constantly changing their terms and conditions, even though they've been online for so long. But I'd say because it's connected to Google, they want to make sure that they're constantly in compliance. So I think both of those would be great. And then I'm gonna throw in Instagram, of course, because that's, to me, what I'd say what is the first platform we think of when we think of influencers. So that's helpful. But if you're just learning, you're like, I just want to learn one platform, I say go with TikTok because it's the newest. So we're all trying to figure it out. Their terms and conditions is a mess. If you have time, read it.
So when we talk about the need for lawyers in this space, you've talked about helping them negotiate. You've talked about reviewing contract terms. What other types of tasks or types of things do you see as wearing your lawyer hat that content creators need to be advised on from a legal standpoint?
Absolutely. So trademarking is huge. A lot of creators don't understand that if you sign a contract and you're allowing this brand to have your name as a trademark, they could take your Instagram account, they could take your social media accounts, they can create a whole clothing line with your name and branding on it. And just the importance of trademarking your branding as well. Because I think since 2020, I've seen a lot of creators start courses or ebooks or master classes and all of these things, and they don't have any legal protection. And then they wonder why another creator is replicating it, is doing the same thing, and they have no legal recourse. They have some, of course, copywriting, things of that nature, but the level of a trademark is a whole different level of protection that a lot of creators just don't understand. So I think intellectual property in general is a great space. Even patent. There's some creators that have created like there was this wig company and they created this different design of a wig that I've never seen before. I used to be in the hair community. So I was like, you need to get that patented, but they didn't. Therefore, now other companies have now replicated it. And now it's just too well known in the commerce that 9 times out of 10, they're not going to get the patent. So things of that nature. Also entertainment. A lot of influencers are now on commercials or getting in movies and things like that. And they have no guidance. Maybe they have guidance as far as like influencer marketing and on social media, but they have no idea the different realm that it takes of being on film and being recorded. What does that look like? So I think that's important. And also business law, a lot of different areas of law, but I'm kind of touch on a few of these, but business law, because a lot of creators don't have LLCs. They're making 6 figures in a month. I know we're all thinking taxes, right? And you can only write off so much as a solopreneur. So you want to make sure that you have the right LLC, the right S Corp, the right corporation. So you're opting for the correct tax bracket as you should. So things like that are really helpful. And then also when it comes to hiring, a lot of creators such as myself are hiring VAs or editors or talent managers and things of that nature, and aren't having them sign NDAs, and they're in their personal space seeing a lot of things, and they wonder why they're broadcasted on their social media, their business, because no one signed an NDA and things of that nature. So there's so many areas that really overlap in the influencer marketing industry.
So it sounds like a lot of what you do in the consulting space is really issue spot. So let's say I'm a social media influencer and I know nothing about the law, and I come across your website and I think, wow, this is everything I've been looking for and more. What would an initial call with you look like? What types of things would we be talking about?
Yeah, so usually I have people book a clarity call, even if they want to work with me long term. One, I want to see if I'm actually able to provide you with the help that you need. Because sometimes I'm like, you know what, I'm not the right fit. Let me give you to someone else. Let me refer you to someone else, and vice versa. So essentially what the call looks like, I have them fill out a questionnaire. Of course, understand that I'm not their lawyer. It's not legal advice. And they, by what they say, how they answer it, whether they're a full-time creator, they're new to creating, they're a small business owner, they're trying to hire influencers in their business and they don't know what that looks like, I help with that a little bit. If they are local, I like to know, just so in the beginning I can understand like where's that boundary and things like that. So I ask them a series of questions, and then at the end I ask, okay, so why did you book the call? So we start with that question, and then it usually leads into additional questions about maybe how do I monetize my platform? So what does that look like? How do I handle if a brand has used my content without my permission? What do I do then? How do I find contract templates? How do I read a contract? So what I like with some of the calls, because my goal isn't for someone to work with me forever, right? Essentially, I want them to come in, let me help you out. You do great. Go out there, get you a manager or agent. I may do that later, but right now I'm not offering like ongoing services, only for like contract review. So at some point, they'll be able to learn the contract, understand the contract, and either do it themselves or get a manager and an agent. I work with a lot of creators that are, I wouldn't necessarily all are new, but it's that they don't have anyone to help give them guidance on contracts. So maybe they aren't under an agency, et cetera. So the call will consist on whatever they need. And sometimes it's like, oh, great, now I know how to read a contract. I don't need to come back. So I get them the highlights, like focus on this, read the whole thing, search these keywords. And then if you have any questions, reach back out.
Great. We do have another question in the chat or in the Q&A here, and it's, how did you balance being an influencer while in law school? I'm struggling managing both now in my 1L year. It's hard for me to determine how much time to dedicate to each at this point.
Great question. And if you notice, the Legal Tea series playlist did not begin until I want to say my second semester of my first year, and or maybe 2L year. That first semester of law school, listen, I did what I could. I showed up when I could online, but I knew I had to give myself grace in that learning curve. Law school is very hard that first year. Social media will be there. I promise you, it will be there. If you're feeling like you don't have the time to put as much time in your studies because you're trying to do social media, put social media on the back burner for a second. I promise you it will be there. Do what you can on the weekends. Make sacrifices. I always say I couldn't go to every birthday celebration. I couldn't go to every event. I couldn't go to every brunch. I love a brunch. I do. I couldn't do all the things because if I knew I wanted to get a video out, I would make that sacrifice there so then I still could study during the day. So find where your boundaries are and where you want to compromise, but always prioritize school first. Law school is way too expensive. It's way too expensive to prioritize something else. Prioritize that. Social media will be there. Also batch record. Some people can record 4 to 5 to 7+ videos in one sitting. So then you're good for the whole month, really. So try to find those pockets of time that you can really sit down, create a lot of content at once, and then pre-schedule it out so it'll post, or set certain days like I'm going to post on these certain days. It's all about planning and being strategic about your posting.
So I almost feel like in the time we've spent chatting, Cameron, both when I first met you back in the fall, when we chatted last week, and now that we're chatting tonight, I feel like you wear a lot of different hats, but they can really be placed into two buckets, right? One is the social media influencer, and one is the social media influencer consultant with a law degree. So do you market yourself in both those spaces? And if so, how is that marketing different if it is?
So actually, it's not different. So I used to try to think of it differently, but I realized every time I post a brand partnership, like on Camera Monet, I'm promoting the Legal Tea Social, because I'm building that credibility aspect of, if you are working with a brand and you're confused about your contracts, you can come to me because I'm also working with brands and I'm executing my contracts. So you can trust the fact that I actually have real experience in creator shoes. I always like to say that I'm on this run with creators and I'm just whispering in their ear, like, girl, don't sign that, or don't do that. And we're all on this race together. Like, it's a unity. I'm not in front of them, like giving them direction. I'm standing next to them and giving them guidance as we both go along this journey. So I think me just being online and working with brands is promoting, but of course I amp it up a little bit on the Legal Tea Social, and I'm very specific on, okay, we're talking about the word perpetuity and why you shouldn't be signing that. So I give a little bit more like the educational format over there, but it's more of the fun lifestyle behind the scenes on the Camera Monet channel.
Do you ever have times when you cross post on the two different channels, or is that not very often?
Sometimes, mostly on like the stories, but sometimes I do. So what I do, not me telling y'all my business, but what I do is I may take like the caption from one page and then put it on the other. And then maybe I'll say it in the Legal Tea Social, like, hey, y'all make sure you don't sign contracts in perpetuity. And then on Camera Monet, I may post like a fashion post, but in the caption, pro tip, make sure you're not signing contracts about perpetuity. Because I learned on like the Camera Monet channel, people like the behind the scenes. It's almost like getting to know like a CEO, how they run their business and how they live their lifestyle, like that aspect of it, aside from like promoting the business. The promoting the business happens on the Legal Tea Social because people go there for the tips and tricks. But people want to say like, well, who's behind the brand? They can come to Camera Monet and say, we're going to get a little bit of information, a little bit of legal tea, but we're really just going to like be so engaged with her as a person and her personality to get to know her and her brand.
So I just want to remind our audience that's watching, we will take more questions in the Q&A, thanks to those who've already submitted theirs. I want to switch gears a little bit, and I feel like we can't do a webinar that we essentially created in the COVID era and not talk about COVID, right? So
yes.
How did the pandemic, or how is the pandemic, some would say, we're still raging here, depending on where in the country you may be, but how did that affect your social media presence or your consulting business, or both?
Yeah, so I quit September 2020. So I quit in the heat of the pandemic. So honestly, online, it really amped up. I made now I've made more because I do it full time, but I made a lot of money compared to previous years from 2020 in 2020. I always think about it like no one was driving around looking at billboards. They were on social media. A lot of times we pay to not watch commercials on Netflix and Hulu. So we go to social media when we have a question about an outfit or makeup or hair, and we get a lot of our inspiration from social media. And I think that was happening a lot in 2020. So I saw a lot of growth in that. And then also that because of that, I also saw growth in consulting because people had more questions. There were more creators going viral and on social media. And then TikTok popped up, and it was just this craze of growth that was happening in the industry. And a lot of people didn't even want to be influencers, and they just kind of stumbled across it, but then realized it was lucrative and wanted to continue to do it. So it was a lot of growth there. But on more of like the personal note on social media, as an influencer, you have to be sensitive and be aware of what's happening in the social space and in our economy and what's happening. You can't just ignore obvious factors. Like, I'm Black, as y'all can see. So Black Lives Matter, it not only affected me personally, but it also affected me online. I couldn't show up the same, and I didn't want to. I wanted to make sure that I was utilizing my platform and my community to the best of my abilities and sharing information that I knew and I could talk about. So that's also, some people see it as a con. I think it can be a pro because you spent so much time building this community, like a safe space where you should be able to give them guidance and take authority in different things. So on social media, that I definitely saw a lot more of that since 2020. And I think a lot more creators, as they should, are talking more about bringing awareness to things that they already are passionate about, maybe in real life, and they're finally talking about it online.
Yeah, it seems to me like at least a lot of the social media influencers that I follow, the ones I seem to resonate with more, are the ones who are just authentic. Like I really feel like I know them almost, even though I've never met them in real life, right? And that shines through in the conversations that I've had with you.
Thank you.
You know, kind of as a piggyback to that, you know, obviously we exist in a global society, right?
Right.
It's heightened by everything that's happened the past couple of years. We see it in social media. We see it throughout everything we see on the internet.
Right.
You know, what advice do you have for folks as it pertains to you know, being aware of your audience? You know, you may have somebody watching you who isn't living the same life that you're living and doesn't have the same experience that you're living. So how do you balance those things and still remain true to your brand and your message?
Right. I think being honest at all times. There's been several times where someone has asked me about a case that I had no idea about just because I'm a lawyer. Everybody thinks we know everything. Child, I don't do criminal law. But so being honest and upfront at all times. So I'll tell them, hey, listen, I haven't talked about it because I'm not knowledgeable about it. I would hate to get on here and assert authority in something and y'all take what I say for Bible and then what I'm saying is completely incorrect. So I'm always honest and upfront and just, hey, if I don't understand it or I don't know about it, I'm not going to speak on it. And I'll let them know, hey, I see this is going on. I'm well aware, but I'm not in a place where I've done enough research to talk about it. And a lot of times, once you curate your community in a way that they trust you, no like trust factor, they're going to take that and understand, okay, well, we know Cameron, we know where she's coming from. And sometimes that's just not the case. And there's going to be people that are still not going to understand, but we have to think of there's millions and trillions of people out there with so many different backgrounds, experience, and stories. You're never going to be able to reach every single person on the same level and where they're at. Everyone's not going to understand. Everyone's not going to have the same point of view. So as long as I'm like, keep it respectful, we can have some dialogue, we can debate. As long as it's respectful and it's honest and it's true, I'm all for it. So also I'll add, like, don't ever feel pressured to talk about something. I never feel pressured to talk about something. I may bring it up, but if I'm passionate about it, I'm definitely going to bring it up. But if I'm not aware about it or I don't know, sometimes people bring it to my attention. I'm like, great, thank you for letting me know. I'll do some research and see if I can talk about it. But don't ever feel like because things are going on, I have to speak about it. You can bring it up and like, okay, I see that there's this going on. I'm doing some research or I'm so sorry to hear about this. But don't do it out of the pressure because it's not going to be accurate, if that makes sense, from what I've noticed.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it goes back to when you're passionate, you're more animated and you're more engaging and people want to listen to what you have to say. And when you're not that, they can see that and they know that, you know, you're just saying something because they expect you to say something or society expects you to say something. So we've had a couple great additional questions come in the Q&A here. So we have a question: as a woman, how do you manage keeping your life private as an influencer and as a lawyer, knowing that it is a broad world? Or I guess my question is, how do you know the bridge between privacy and keeping it real? It's a great question.
Oh, I love that. That is so good. For me, learn from I crossed the boundary and I know where it is. So sometimes that's the testimony. You don't have to do that. I always think of, if I was in, let's say you're working for someone and your boss put your video or put your content on the screen, would you feel comfortable enough to explain what was happening? That was my boundary then. So in law school, if my professor asked me a question about my social media, would I be comfortable talking about it? I'm not talking about being nervous because I would be like, not that you're my business. But just I know what I'm doing isn't like crossing any lines. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm not showcasing myself in a manner that I don't want to be viewed as. I'm very comfortable with what I'm posting. So that's kind of where I found the boundary. And also understanding that you can tell a lot without telling all of it. I share that I'm a lawyer. I share that I just moved, but I'm not saying where I moved, why I moved, who I moved with, where I'm living. Like you can tell a little bit without telling all the details. So, and also you can focus on certain areas. So maybe some people, they just talk about being a lawyer in their life as a lawyer and working with their firm. You don't have to share your favorite coffee. You don't have to share, this is my outfit of the day, if you don't want to. You don't feel pressured again, kind of like that pressure. Just because someone asks, you can politely let them know that's not something I talk about online, or I don't feel comfortable sharing with that. But thank you so much for inquiring. Don't be afraid to set those boundaries, because once you cross it, it can be hard to bring it back. Because once you talk about something online, you may forget, your friends may forget, your family may forget, but I promise you there's someone in your audience that will not forget. So err on the side of caution, especially as a lawyer.
Great. Another audience question we have here. I geek out when it comes to civil rights, constitutional law, and video games. I thought about creating a Twitch channel where I can stream and talk about civil rights and the legal issues around them, but I'm not sure if there's a space for it or if I'm the right person to do it. I also don't know if I bring enough personality myself to attract an audience, but I love sharing my passions and educating others in the process. What's your advice for finding your niche in the content creation? And how do I know if I'm being a social media, and how do I know if being a social media influencer is right for me?
Great questions. So first, I think that is phenomenal. Anytime you can incorporate something that's already shown a lot of progress in the social media space, such as video gaming, and adding your own unique twist to it, you're going to excel. That's how I view it. People see me and they're like, you're just an influencer like everybody else. You're talking about hair and fashion. Yes, but I'm a lawyer and I also specialize in influencer marketing. It's that extra bit of something different that can pique someone's desire to follow you and subscribe. So I say go for it. The best way, and that leads me into the best way to figure out your niche and like what type of content you want to create, is starting to create and seeing how it feels. I create on YouTube. I share my life. I share this because I actually like it. I enjoy it. I love interacting with my audience. I get amazing comments where it says, you know what? I am struggling in law school and I watch your videos while I'm studying to help me push through. Those are so important to me. That's why I continue to share. Or someone says, you know what? I don't even want to work at a law firm. I want to work for a nonprofit. And because you did something different, it gave me that push to try it myself. And I love my internship. Those comments really helped me find guidance into what I'm going to continue to share every time I go in my audience comments to see what they're asking. So just start to create, see how it feels, see if you enjoy it. Does it fuel you? Does it drain you? What does that look like? And then see what kind of responses you're getting back. I also would say, you said Twitch, I would say get on YouTube as well, just saying. YouTube video gamers and babies that review things are the top 2 earners on YouTube. Just throwing it out there. But I think that's a great idea. As far as if you like it, again, it's how do you feel when you're creating the content? Take out the comments, take out the negative comments that may come along. Don't even worry about that. Just when you're in your space, in your zone by yourself with the camera up and you're playing that video game and you're talking about civil rights, you're like, I love this. It's so much fun. Oh, wait, watch out. How do you feel when you're doing that? Are you excited? Are you passionate? And if you feel that, then just go for it. And you can always stop. You can always delete the videos. You can always change your mind. You can always shift it into just doing video games. You can always shift it into just doing sit down videos and talking about civil rights and things of that nature. You can switch it however you want because it is your channel. I always say my social media and everyone's social media is like their house. People are going to come in your house and say, I don't really like that rug, but guess what? Who bought it? I did, and I like the rug, and that's why it's there. So don't be afraid to treat it and change it and shift it however you may see fit. I think I answered all the questions. There was quite a few.
I think you did, and that's all great advice. I keep hearing the same themes. You know, if you're passionate and you're authentic and you're engaging, you're going to be successful in this space.
Absolutely. Oh, I did want to mention, I think the person said they weren't sure if their personality would be like enthusiastic enough, and people follow people for different reasons. I am upbeat and like so animated, but that's just like my natural personality. I don't amp it up on social media. Unfortunately, child, this is me in real life. But I can carry that into the online space. But I follow so many creators where it's like, girl, I am stressed from work. I just put her stuff on or put his video on so I can be relaxed. They're calming, they're chill. I get the information and I go about my business. So there is a space, I truly believe, online for any type of personality and any type of creator.
I think we have time for just one more question before we do our wrap up. So we have question, what advice can you give to a law student who's interested in becoming a social media influencer, but is afraid of people perceiving their content as controversial for a lawyer? For instance, law professors are always telling students not to post certain things.
So without knowing what are you trying to post, I would go back to if they put your content on a board or in the classroom, how would you feel? If you are posting something that you would deem as inappropriate, don't post it, right? But if it's something where you're like, I'm so comfortable and I'm confident in whatever I'm posting, I don't care who sees it. Your law professor isn't your boss. I'm sorry. Yes, they grade your papers, but if they're grading your paper off your content, that's something else we need to talk about. But don't not create content and not be your authentic self because of the fear of what others are going to think. Because guess what? They're going to still have opinions regardless of what you do. But if you're passionate, like we were just saying, if you're excited and you love the content you're posting, you'll find confidence in that the more people ask you about that. There's been so many times I can think and reflect. I was carrying around my vlog camera in law school in Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, and they're looking at me like I have 4 eyeballs. And I continued to do it because I knew it was way bigger than me just trying to be cute on social media, trying to give tips and tricks about law school, and that it's way more than that. It's students that literally went to Cumberland School of Law because I was showing the real behind the scenes of being a student there. It's so much bigger than just creating, which is why I said start with your why. What is your why? Why do you create? Maybe you start to create because you just love to shoot video content. And then maybe it turns into, oh, because you love to share tips and tricks about your life. And then maybe it turns into, oh, well, maybe you just became a mom and you want to share that journey with your audience. And then you build this community of moms. So once you get in there, and you'll start to find like the why the more you create. So I say go for it. Don't let them hold you back.
I think that's a perfect segue into my final question that we talked about, which is what's maybe 2 or 3 little tips of advice that you would give to our members who are listening or who watch this on the replay if they want to explore this, whether being a social media influencer is for them. What would be the best piece or pieces of advice you'd have?
My number one motto is what's for you is for you. So whatever you desire to have, you're going to get it. So whatever, if it's you want to be a full-time social media influencer, go after it, fight for it. Don't be afraid to help others along the way because you're going to get what you're going to get regardless. So literally, what's for you is for you. If you want to be a lawyer that's dominating the social media industry and you focus on trademarks or copyright or contracts or business, you can get that. You truly can. You just have to work hard and ignore the naysayers, especially in this industry because it's so new. Until it becomes, I think we're slowly getting there, but until people understand like the depth and honestly how much money people are really making in this industry, they're still going to have negative comments. People are going to say, well, it's not worth it. You're wasting your time. Social media this, social media that. But they can talk all they want because I am in it and I understand and I see it. I see how much my clients are making. I know how much I'm making. I see how many times I have a client that says, I've been looking for a consultant. I've been looking for a lawyer. I have no idea what this word means. And I constantly see that over and over and over, even though I feel like, well, don't everybody know everything already? They don't. So don't be afraid to just take a risk. And like I said, realize like what is for you is truly for you, regardless of what anybody says.
Wow. I mean, that's a lot. That's great. I love that. What is for you is for you. Definitely. I echo those sentiments. So, I mean, we've made it through an entire hour. I can't hardly believe that. It feels like it's been 15 minutes, but I don't think we've dropped your social media handles yet. So do you want to tell our audience how they can find you on social media?
Absolutely. So yeah, just come hang with me in the social media streets. You can find me at Cameron Monet on Instagram, as well as YouTube and TikTok. You can find me if you want more of the legal tea aspect of it and see more of the business behind everything. You can go to the Legal Tea Social on Instagram and or thelegaltea.com. And if you have questions, comments, and concerns, please reach out. I'm more than happy to help and give some guidance.
Well, Cameron, thank you so very much for your time tonight. This was very worthwhile. For those of you who have joined us from across the country, we appreciate your time. If you have any suggestions for an upcoming webinar, you can send those to our speaker series chair, Michelle Isherwood. Her contact information is in the chat. But otherwise, I hope you are all safe and well. And thanks again, Cameron. And thanks to all for watching. Have a good night.
Thank y'all. Thank you for having me.